Rain poured down on the city that night, drenching the empty park bench where Daniel sat, lost in his own thoughts. A single dad, tired from another long day of work and parenting, he was used to feeling invisible. But when he noticed a woman sitting on the next bench, her designer dress soaked and her eyes red from crying, something in him stirred. She didn't look like someone who belonged out here in the cold. Without thinking, he took off his jacket and walked over. "Hey," he said softly, offering it to her. "No one deserves to sit alone in the rain." She looked up, startled, then hesitated. But the warmth in his voice broke through the storm around her. That was the moment everything began, the night a poor single dad comforted a heartbroken stranger, not knowing she was one of the richest women in the country. Daniel's life had been nothing but a constant fight for survival. After his wife passed away 3 years ago, he worked 2 jobs to raise his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Every night he told her bedtime stories about hope and kindness, even though he often doubted them himself. That evening, he'd stopped at the park to catch his breath before heading home, his hands blistered from another day at the construction site. The woman beside him looked shattered. Her mascara ran down her cheeks, her phone kept buzzing, and she ignored it every time. He could tell she wanted to be left alone, but something about her silence felt heavier than his own. "You know," Daniel said after a few moments, "sometimes talking helps. Even to a stranger." She gave a bitter laugh. What could a stranger possibly understand? He smiled faintly. "Maybe not your world, but pain? That, I know too well." She turned toward him then, truly seeing him for the first time, the worn jacket, the tired eyes, the kind smile that somehow still held warmth despite everything. Slowly, words began to spill from her lips. She told him about betrayal, how her fiancé had cheated on her with her assistant, how her entire life suddenly felt like a lie. Daniel just listened. He didn't judge, didn't interrupt. When she finally fell silent, he said gently, "You'll be okay. You just don't know it yet. The people who break us don't get to decide our story. We do." For the first time that night, she smiled, a small, fragile thing, but real. He gave her his umbrella, said goodbye, and walked away, unaware that the woman he had comforted wasn't just any stranger. She was Evelyn Cross, CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the world. The next morning, Daniel rushed to drop Lily off at school and then headed to the job site. His boots were soaked, his back hurt, but he pushed through. He didn't know that someone was looking for him. At her office, Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about the man from the park. His words had stayed with her all night. She had money, power, and everything people dreamed of, but no one had ever spoken to her with that kind of simple sincerity. For once, she'd felt human again. She made a few calls, tracked down the construction company logo she'd seen on his jacket, and by noon, she was standing at the site in a sleek black car that turned every head. Workers paused, whispering, as she stepped out, her heels clicking against the gravel. Daniel froze when he saw her. "You," he stammered. "From last night?" She nodded, smiling faintly. "From last night." He looked confused. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to thank you," she said. "And offer you something." Before he could respond, his foreman came over, eyes wide with recognition. "Ms. Cross." "Ma'am, it's an honor. Everyone here uses your company's software." Daniel's jaw dropped. "Wait, you're that Evelyn Cross?" She chuckled softly. "Guilty." Later that day, she invited him for coffee. They talked for hours, not as a billionaire and a worker, but as two broken souls finding comfort in honesty. She learned about Lily, about the struggles he faced as a single father, and how he still found reasons to smile. Something about him, his humility, his resilience, moved her deeply. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn began showing up more often. She'd bring lunch for the workers, sometimes even sit with Lily and read her stories. Slowly, the walls she'd built around her heart began to crumble. Daniel, too, found himself opening up in ways he hadn't since his wife's death, but soon the world began to notice. Paparazzi photos of Evelyn laughing with a mystery man spread like wildfire. Her board questioned her judgment, accusing Daniel of taking advantage of her. Hurt by the accusations, Daniel decided to distance himself. When he told her, "You deserve someone from your world," Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "You are my world, Daniel. You just don't see it." He shook his head and walked away, convinced that love between them could never survive the weight of their differences. Weeks passed. Daniel returned to his lonely routine: work, Lily, sleep. But then, one morning, he was called to a meeting at the same site. To his shock, the company had a new sponsor, Cross Technologies. Evelyn had invested in rebuilding the area's housing program, and she'd made Daniel the project manager. When he found her waiting at the site, he couldn't speak. She smiled and said, "You once told me we decide our own stories. So I'm writing ours differently this time." Tears welled in his eyes as Lily ran to hug her legs, calling, "Miss Evelyn." Daniel finally whispered, "You're crazy, you know that?" She smiled through her tears. "Only for you." And just like that, the man who had once comforted a stranger in the rain found love, respect, and a new beginning, not because of what he had, but because of who he was. Some meetings are accidents, others are fate, dressed as rain.